In this video, we'll walk through how to set up Clearbit for Marketo. Using a Marketo webhook, we'll connect it to your Smart campaigns and send records over to Clearbit for enrichment as they enter your Marketo database. Clearbit will enrich person and company data using your field mapping settings for lead records in your Marketo organization. Once a record has been enriched, Clearbit will update that record on a rolling 30-day cycle. For example, if a record was enriched on the 10th of the month, we'll enrich it on the 10th of every following month. For this setup, your user profile in Marketo must have admin access. If not, you'll need to reach out to your team so they can grant you the proper permissions. You can access Clearbit for Marketo from your Clearbit dashboard by clicking the Switch Applications button at the bottom left and clicking into the Clearbit for Marketo app. Alternately, you can access your Clearbit for Marketo dashboard from marketo.clearbit.com. You might get a screen asking you to provide access requests to your Clearbit account. Pick the Clearbit team you're trying to access and click Authorize Access. From the top left, we'll click the Setup tab and go through the process of connecting our Marketo org to our Clearbit account. First, we're going to create an API-only user role and an API-only user in Marketo. From your Marketo org, we'll go to the top right and click on the Admin tab. In the left panel, we'll navigate to Security, User and Roles, Roles. If you already have an API-only user role, you're welcome to skip this step. Otherwise, we'll now create an API-only user role by clicking New Role at the top of the page. We'll copy the role details over from the Clearbit for Marketo dashboard and set this user up so that they have permissions to access API. Now let's click Create. Going back to the Clearbit for Marketo dashboard, let's go to step 2. Now we'll create an API-only user who is going to use that role. If you have an API-only user already set up, you can skip this step. From your Marketo admin settings, we'll go to Security, Users and Roles, Users tab. Now click Invite New User. Set the email to an email address you have access to. We'll copy the remaining user details from your Clearbit dashboard. Once filled out, click Next and go to step 2. We'll give this user the API-only user role that we just created, and then click Next. The message form in step 3 doesn't matter because this is an API-only user. Let's complete this and move on to step 3. With the Clearbit API user set up in Marketo, we'll now create a custom web service that connects Clearbit to Marketo. Navigate to the Services tab from your admin panel. We'll go to Integration, Launch Point, New, at the top of the page and click New Service. Let's copy the service details from your Clearbit dashboard. Once completed, click Create. With the web service created, we can now copy those details over to Clearbit. From Admin, we'll go to Integration, Launch Point, and click on Clearbit for Marketo. In this instance, we'll be using Demo Onboarding as our demo account already has a Clearbit for Marketo endpoint. Let's click View Details, then copy and paste the details over to our Clearbit dashboard. Once copied over, let's click Next Step. Now we'll copy your Marketo REST API endpoint over. This tells Clearbit where it should be sending data to. From Admin, expand the integration group, Web Services, and scroll down to the REST API section. We'll copy the REST endpoint over to our Clearbit dashboard. After copying this URL over, take a second to double check that you copied the correct endpoint. The REST endpoint URL ends in /REST. After verifying you've copied the correct endpoint, let's click Next Step. So far, we've created an API-only user role and set up a Clearbit user with that role. We've created a Marketo web service and provided those credentials to Clearbit. Now we'll create a webhook, which will be used to trigger enrichment on Smart campaigns as leads are created. Starting in the admin section, we'll go to Integration, Webhooks, New Webhook. We'll copy the details over from Clearbit for Marketo. We'll make this webhook use a GET request type and set the response type to None. Let's click Create, then go back to our Clearbit dashboard and move on to the next step. With our webhook created, we'll now set it up to use your Clearbit credentials. This tells our servers that the requests are done on behalf of your account. In this admin section, we'll go to Integration, Webhooks, and on the very right, we'll look for and then click the Clearbit for Marketo webhook we just created. At the top middle of the page, we'll hover over the Webhooks Actions tab and select Set Custom Header. Let's copy both the header and value from the Clearbit dashboard over to Marketo. Click Save, and then we'll go to Step 8 in the Clearbit for Marketo wizard. With the Clearbit webhook created, all that's left to do is create or use an existing Smart campaign and make the webhook part of its workflow. In our example, we'll create a new Smart campaign that we'll use to trigger enrichment on all new leads as they come in. At the top left, we'll click on the Marketo icon and click on Marketing Activities. At the top middle of the page, we'll hover over New and click on New Smart Campaign. For this Smart campaign, we'll place it in our Data Management folder, though you're welcome to place yours in another folder that's more appropriate. We'll give this the name Clearbit for Marketo and copy the description over from our Clearbit dashboard. Let's create this campaign. On our Clearbit dashboard, we'll move to the next step. We're going to add some custom fields to Marketo to help track Clearbit enrichment. In Marketo, we're going to go back to Admin and click Database Management, Field Management. For these fields, you want to make sure that you're copying the names exactly, as Marketo's reference to these fields are case sensitive. At the top middle of the page, we'll click New Custom Field and set the type to integer and call it Clearbit Status. This field will store integer values denoting whether Clearbit had information for that person. We'll return a 200 denoting that Clearbit had data and a 404 denoting that Clearbit did not have data for that person or company. Now let's create this field and go back to New Custom Field and create another field. For this one, we'll set the type to date and name it Clearbit Enriched At. This is a timestamp tracking the last time Clearbit updated fields for this Marketo record. Click Create, then we'll go back to our Clearbit dashboard and click Mapped Fields to start setting up our field mappings. This Field Mappings page can be accessed at any point on the left-hand side through the Fields tab. Before we add any fields to our Clearbit dashboard, let's first talk about how they work. Clearbit will automatically use that Marketo lead's email address to look up person and company information. You do not need to set this field as part of your field mappings. As new field mappings are created and saved to your account, they'll only be applied to future enrichment as records come in. New field mappings are not retroactively applied to already existing records. We'll only apply those new field mappings as records are re-enriched as part of your refresh cycle or as part of any new backfills you trigger. When mapping data from Clearbit over to Marketo, you can choose to use existing Marketo fields or create Clearbit-specific Marketo fields. If you're planning on using Clearbit form shortening, we recommend using existing Marketo fields, as those fields will contain Clearbit information and fall back to user-inputted data when Clearbit doesn't have anything. Otherwise, you're welcome to create Clearbit-specific fields for cases where only Clearbit is going to be adding or updating that field. To add a new field mapping, we'll first choose the Clearbit field we want to receive data from using the top dropdown. This dropdown provides data for both the person and the company associated with that email domain. Person data in this dropdown is prefixed with person, whereas company data is prefixed with company. Let's work through the example of adding a person's job title and the company's employee size as part of enrichment. We'll assume that you already have the respective fields in Marketo labeled as job title and employee size. First, we'll pick the appropriate Clearbit field for this job title, which is person.employment.title. At the bottom of the field mapping page, we'll see this Clearbit field. Clicking into the drop-down to the right, we'll now be able to choose the Marketo field. Here, we're going to pick job title. Let's repeat this process for the role and pick the company metrics employee value from the top dropdown. Navigating down to this field, we'll set it to the Marketo field name of number of employees. Finally, we'll click Save Field Mappings at the bottom right. It's important to remember to save your field mappings every time before exiting this page. Any unsaved changes will be discarded and you'll need to re-add them. With our title and company size field mapping set up, we can now connect everything together so that records are enriched as they are created in Marketo. Let's navigate back to the Smart campaign we created, click into Marketo at the top left, and then head over to Marketing Activities. Under Data Management, we'll go to the Clearbit for Marketo Smart campaign. From this Smart campaign, we'll click Smart List tab at the top middle of the page. On the very right, we'll add the Person is Created trigger, and then switch to the Flow tab. Right now, our Smart campaign is set up to trigger our flow every time a person is created. We'll now build out our flow to send this record over to Clearbit so it can be enriched. Let's drag the call webhook action over to our flow, select our Clearbit for Marketo webhook. Finally, we'll go to the Schedule tab at the top and click Activate. And with that, any new lead that comes into this Smart campaign will trigger Clearbit enrichment. Now that you're totally set up, let's show an example of how Clearbit can enrich records in real time. Going back to our Marketo org, let's recap what our Smart campaign currently does. This Smart campaign will add new people to its Smart list as they are created, and then call the Clearbit webhook we created so that records can be enriched with Clearbit data. Let's also make sure that the Smart campaign is activated before moving on. To create a lead directly in Marketo, let's go over to our database and then the No Acquisition Program folder, since our lead is being manually created by us. Now let's leave the first name, last name, and company name blank. Remember, Clearbit will look up person and company data using the email address. This email address does not need to be set up as part of your field mappings and is automatically handled for you. With this email address, Clearbit will then map both person and company data over to your records based on your field mappings. In this example, let's use Clearbit's CEO, Alex McCaw, as our email. Now, let's create this lead and see what happens. First, we'll look this record up by the email address we just entered. Clicking into this lead, we can see that the information has been enriched as expected. Clearbit provided us with first name, company name, company phone number, and company address. We can also further verify that our logs worked by clicking into the activity log. Scrolling down a little bit, we can see that this lead was created and triggered our Clearbit enrichment webhook. Up above, we can see all of the details that Clearbit was able to enrich. And that's it. Thanks, everyone.